So, hello, and welcome to Truth You Can Wake Up To, although that's only what it's called at the moment, because there was a comment on one of my videos a few days back from somebody saying that probably a good idea if I change the name of this show to Bullshit You Cannot Trust. Bullshit You Cannot Trust. So, we'll give it a go. Let me start again. Oh, hello, and welcome to Bullshit You Can't Even Trust. I'm Samuel William. It is 12:38. I can't quite believe it's 12:38 because I first started trying to record this episode at 9:02, and I'm still here, and I've started again. And it's because what I want to talk about is a quagmire, it's a swamp of words and meanings and lots of strange history and the present allegiances and the agenda and all of these sorts of things sort of joining together in one. So this will be the take. I promise. Myself. It's Tuesday, by the way. Happy Tuesday, or as I like to call it, Truths Day. Truths Day. Happy Truths Day afternoon. It's the 26th of February. It's miserable outside, absolutely miserable. It's not weather for human beings out there. Dark and drizzly and freezing cold, horrible. So I'm in here, my warm booth. My warming booth. So this episode is called Should We Abolish Juries? Should we abolish juries? Question mark? Because that apparently is the debate that's currently going on in the public arena. The reason there's a debate, or a so-called debate going on in the public arena, is because of a strange set of circumstances that happened with a case in the Crown Court. The Crown Court in Southwark, which is on the south bank of the River Thames. It's where the Tate Modern is in Southwark. And the case being heard... and that word, being heard. Who's doing the hearing on this case? It's the jury. The case that's being heard was by somebody called Vicky Price. Vicky Price, the ex-wife of this guy Chris Huhne, who's a so-called disgraced MP because he managed to convince his wife to take a driving penalty for him. He was speeding. He was going to the airport. Presumably he was late for his aeroplane or whatever. He was racing to the airport in his car, and he was snapped, click, click, by a speed camera because he was exceeding the speed limit. He would have got points on his license and may have lost his license. And being an MP, of course, and maintaining several homes and having a luxury mansion in the country and also, a bachelor pad in London and having to race around in a nice posh car, it's going to be very difficult for him if he lost his license. So his wife took the points for him. She basically lied and said that she was driving the car and she got the points. No problem. Until they got divorced. And presumably this lady who used to be called Vicky Huhne, now called Vicky Price, because she hates her ex-husband. And she's trying to get revenge. And basically she got revenge because when this all came out that she'd taken the points for him, he lost his job and he's no longer an MP. That's why he's disgraced. But it's sort of gone badly for her as well because she's now in court facing the accusation of perverting the course of justice. So by taking these points and lying, apparently that is a perversion of the course of justice, because getting a fine for speeding or getting points for speeding, that's justice. Next time you're sort of driving down the motorway, you see one of those little yellow boxes of flashing justice. I hope you feel proud. They're not revenue collection for the local authority. Oh, no. That's justice in a small box. Makes you feel proud to be around, doesn't it? Yeah. But the curious thing that happened with this is that with this case is that the jury were dissolved or vanquished or got rid of or slapped around the face. The jury basically got dismissed because apparently they were asking too many questions. I think it was 10 questions they asked. The one that really caught my eye was that they asked the judge, they said to the judge, "Excuse me, sir," who was called Mr. Justice Sweeney, which always reminds me of like that old like cop show, The Sweeney, where in the opening credits, it's like the guy comes in and says, "Put your trousers on, you're nicked." Mr. Justice Sweeney got annoyed with the jury because they asked him, are they allowed to use reason, or should their decision be based on only evidence? Should they just use the evidence to make a decision, or are they allowed to use reason? And the judge said, "Get out of here, you crazy illiterate scoundrels!" And he got rid of the jury. And now apparently there's a public debate about going on about whether or juries are archaic, medieval, stupid, irrelevant. And there's, it's on the TV, and it's in a few newspapers, and it's on lots of blogs and Twitter, and it's just doing the rounds, this so-called debate about whether or not juries should be abolished. Now, firstly, there is a really good, when this idea first touches your head, of course, most of you will realise that actually there's no such thing as a court. I know there's something called a court, and the Crown Court and the Magistrates Court, but these are corporate places of business. These are private corporate entities that operate for profit. We know that. And the jury within that, is there any relevance in the jury being there? Well, even though these are sort of corrupted corporate things, these private places of business, that actually makes it even more important that there's a jury, because otherwise, anybody who walks into a court, anything can happen to them. I'll get into the importance of juries in a bit. Probably the most high-profile article that was written about this was in The Guardian. And it's probably high-profile because it's sort of quite controversial. But it's by a guy called Simon Jenkins. Now, Simon Jenkins, to give him his credit, he's a very, very, very well-established and very experienced propagandist. Reporter or journalist. He's writing for The Guardian. He used to be the editor of that daily racism machine called The Evening Standard, which they give away free because otherwise people wouldn't read it. And he wrote in the Guardian an article entitled "Juries, It's Time They Went the Way of the Ducking Stool." And he calls this whole case a soap opera. Now, let me just quote a little bit from this article so that you can sort of understand where he's coming from, what he's saying. He's saying, and I'll put on his voice because I'm sure this is how he speaks, he says, and I quote, "Trial by jury is a hangover from days when England was ruled by manorial courts and vestrymen, by impressed constables, pricked militias, and compulsory dog-catching was the order of the day." Compulsory dog-catching. He's basically saying that juries are out of date, and that they're medieval, and that they should be abolished. Of course, the question out there in the world of media is, should we abolish juries? It's like a question. Now, not to sort of prey too much on semantics here, but should we abolish? It's like we are being asked as members of the society where our opinion matters, which is what a jury is. So asking the question, should we abolish juries, is asking us to make a decision as if we were a jury about whether or not we should abolish our opinion. So that this whole thing is absolutely crazy. And this whole thing of should public opinion be in court, or is basically exactly the same question as should there be democracy? And is democracy, as in opinions of the public opinion to the leadership, is that archaic and medieval, and should that be abolished? Should that go the way of the ducking stool? Of course, this guy's argument is yes. And a lot of people's argument is yes, our opinions don't matter. Now, the whole system of courts is where we got the system of democracy from. The Houses of Parliament is essentially a courthouse. The jury in the Houses of Parliament are essentially the MPs. They are the representatives of people. That's what a jury is. It's not these sort of 12 people. They are important. Their views are important. It's that they are sort of chosen supposedly randomly because they represent a demographic and a school of thought and a school of reason, and they represent a sort of a segment of the community. I mean, they don't just like go into the local British National Party local pub and pull 12 people that are sitting around the bar and say, you 12, come with me. We've got to make some important decisions. No, the 12 people, they come from scattered communities and scattered areas. And the whole idea, of course, is that they are sort of quite similar to the person who's being tried, which is a load of crap anyway, because in this, like Vicky Price, ex-wife of an MP, she is like an economist, and she's massively involved in the system. The people who were on the jury, just like ordinary folks, who apparently are not allowed to use reason to come to a decision. They must only use evidence. Now, of course, when I say democracy, and I'm talking about the Houses of Parliament, I'm talking about this romanticised idea of what democracy should be, which is like these MPs actually represent the people of which they are a member of Parliament of, their region or whatever, their area. You could say that's true because in the House of Parliament, of course, you do have independent MPs who aren't allied to a political party and all that kind of stuff, but there's so few of them that they can't actually make any difference at all other than shout and make comments and have a go at people inside the Houses of Parliament. But the idealised version of democracy and in the Houses of Parliament is that the MPs are the jury, and the jury make the decisions. The leader, like the judge or David Cameron or whatever, the leader in democracy doesn't make any decisions. That's the idealism. The decisions are sort of written down, finalised by the leader, but the opinions come from the jury or from the MPs or from the people. These people that represent public opinion from each of their local areas. That's where the decision making comes from, not from the judge or the leader. So to abolish juries in the court system is to basically say that we should have dictatorship. Now, I would say, in my opinion, and this is the part which is about bullshit you cannot trust, here it comes. In my opinion, the pressure to get rid of juries is the pressure to get rid of democracy. It is the argument that ordinary people cannot be trusted to make decisions. And I believe that this pressure comes from the European Union, from the European Commission. Because in order to take control of a region or a country, you really only need to control three things. Well, sort of four, but three main things. You need to control the political system. You need to control the economy, the economic system. And you need to control the system of law, or the courts. Now, I would argue that the European Commission already are in control of the political system. It is said in a lot of places that over 80% of all of the laws that are coming into this country are directives from the European Commission. We know, and we can see, it's very obvious that the European Union is sort of gaining control of the economic system, this fiscal union that David Cameron apparently is getting us a good deal on. So they have control of the economic system, but do they have control of the courts? Well, the only thing that's actually stopping them from having control of the courts is having ordinary people in there screwing it up for them. Like, making sure that they can't... It's difficult, isn't it? It's interesting to look at a bit of history as to really sort of like get a handle on what this means. Now, I said the political system came from the jury system. Well, if you trace that back as to where all these things happened, it leads to one place. And surprise, surprise, it's the City of London. In the middle of the City of London is a place called the Guildhall. Now, the Guildhall is still the political building for the City of London, the Square Mile, as it's known, because they have their own government. And their own government is sort of done in the old way of the guilds, which is why it was called the Guildhall, which was actually an elected representative of each specialism within the economic market. So you had the goldsmiths, you had the mercers, you had the merchant tailors, you had the joiners, you had the vintners who were in control of the importation and quality of wine. And these were the things that made up the sort of the medieval marketplace throughout the 13 and 1400s in the City of London. You still have the old remnants of that today in the road names. In fact, leading up to the Guildhall is a road called Poultry, which was the poultry market. And I guess the guild for those would have been poulters. Or poltons, who knows. Now, they would each have an elected representative within the Guildhall, and together they would vote on things. So if something needs to be done or there was some kind of problem, they would get together, all of these representatives of the larger community, the economic community, and they would vote. And the vote, the outcome would not be decided by a judge, although there was a judge there. And the judge would be there to make sure that the debating was fair, and he would there make sure that everybody got a say, but he would not decide anything. The decision would be done by majority votes. And this was sort of like, it was a courthouse. It was like a jury and a judge, and sort of the problems. And that was the thing that sort of led into our sort of parliamentary political process we have now in Westminster. Of course, the House of Parliament is the House of Commons, the House of Lords, inside this massive palatial stone golden building. There used to be a royal palace where that stood, which is the one that the gunpowder plot nearly blew up. 1605, the Guy Fawkes nearly blew up. The old royal palace where they used to use some of the rooms as debating houses. But before that was there, the City of London, the Guildhall, that was the political system. And that's the thing, that system of law, that system of sort of juries, if you like, and the way that system worked is what leads to the system we have today. Now, if you go to the Guildhall, it's a very interesting experience. They don't often open it up to the public. I went probably about a year or so ago. I took some photographs while I was in there. I wasn't supposed to take photographs. I took some sneaky photographs. I specifically took a photograph of like an old parchment, because at the back of the Guildhall there's this old parchment which gives the details of some of the most famous cases that took place in the Guildhall, as when it wasn't used in a sort of parliamentary fashion, it was just the courthouse. And there was a case, and I can't remember the year, but it was something like 1408 or something like that. There's a case of a trial of a woman who was standing accused of theft. Now, she had stolen an apple from the market, and the penalty for theft, no matter what it was, whether it was you stole an apple or whether you stole 1,000 guineas, the penalty was death by hanging. So she was facing the prospect of being hanged. Now, when the trial went on, of course, the jury was there, and the jury heard the evidence, which was this woman was very, 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 very poor, and so she stole an apple not to feed herself, but to feed her starving child. Now, when the jury looked at that evidence, even though the law says she should be hanged, they actually found her innocent. They said that she was innocent because the ethical, her actions ethically were pointing in the right direction, and in actual fact, she did something good rather than doing something bad. Which sounds great, doesn't it? Apart from the fact that the judge intervened. And what the judge did is that he dismissed the jury. He then fined the jury quite hefty sums for coming to the wrong decision. He threatened them, and that if they ever did it again, they would go to prison. And then once the jury had been dismissed, he overturned their decision, and he sentenced the woman to death. Now, based on that circumstance, you tell me what is wrong in that situation. You tell me whether or not the jury or the judging system is archaic, is medieval. Because, of course, that is the danger. The reason that judges nowadays would get upset with a jury is not because the jury is stupid, not because the jury need some kind of training course before they go in, probably run by Common Purpose or something. It's not because the juries are inadequate. It's because the judges feel like they should be making the decisions. The judges are telling the jury what they can do. Of course, a very obvious example of that was the case of Dodi Al-Fayed and Princess Diana dying in the High Court, the Royal Courts of Justice. The jury saw the evidence. When they were asked to go and decide their verdict, the judge told them what they could decide upon. The evidence, of course, says that it was murder. But the judge told them they couldn't say it was murder. Because murder, there's too many questions. Because, there's some people died, and there were some people who did it. And if you say murder, we then have to go and try and find those people who did it and bring them to justice. Maybe just a speeding fine. So the judge said, no. The worst thing, the harshest thing you can come to is unlawful killing. And so that's what they said, unlawful killing. Because they weren't allowed to say murder. Wouldn't it have been convenient for the judge if he could just make the decision? And then he wouldn't have to go to the bother of trying to convince the jury that what they could say and what they couldn't say. Impartiality is what a jury is about. It's about people who do not work for the crown. It's about people who do not represent the law society. You could call them illiterate. And that's, I believe, in the dictionary definition of jury, which are a group of illiterates. It doesn't mean they can't read or write. It means they are not part of the law society, and it means they are not fluent in legalese. Because in order to be fluent in legalese, you basically need to be involved with the Law Society, which means you're not impartial. Of course, every solicitor and barrister who operates in this country, in this region of Europe, have to pass the bar, the Temple Bar, in the Inns of Court in Temple, which is in the City of London. So it doesn't matter where they are functioning, they all have allegiances and ties and connections into actually the old control system of Roman Catholicism, which is based in Temple Church, which is why St. Paul's Cathedral in the City of London is aligned with Temple Church, because St. Paul's is a follower of Temple Church, a hidden away little place. More bullshit that you cannot trust. I would say where this is going is that the United Kingdom or Britain or England or whatever you choose to call it is no longer going to be a country. It is going to be a region of Europe. And being a region of Europe, we would have a regional European court. And this regional European court would not have a jury. So it makes that transition towards that European legal system operating in this land, it makes that transition a lot more smooth. Because instead of going from a legal system that has a jury into a form of dictatorship, what you do is you produce a form of dictatorship in the system we already have, so that when it swaps over to the European system, nobody notices. So that is my bullshit you cannot trust. Click favourite. I have noticed when I look at my statistics on YouTube, when you click favourite, the video gets 10 times more views. Just look back. I either get 400 or I get 4,000. And the difference is just clicking that favourite button. So if you could do that for me, that would be fantastic. Until next time, I've been Samuel William. Goodbye.